Hey folks, it's Doc Christine here again, and today I first want to give tribute to the members of the forces that fought for us, gave their life in many cases, so we could be more free. It's Remembrance Day here in Canada, it's Veterans Day in the United States. So here in North America on this November 11th, we remember those who gave their lives for our freedom. Now, some of you may know it. I was born in Germany, and my parents and grandparents have told me many stories about it, how it was before and after Hitler came to power and fell, and the aftermath of the world wars in Europe during the middle of the 20th century. I still remember those stories very well. And in school, we watched the images and videos of the inmates or prisoners of the concentration camps with horror and regret for what happened to innocent people during this time. And I live in Canada now, and there was very, very long time that there was a war on Canadian soil. Most Canadians do not know anymore how war feels. There is still war in other parts of this world, and people are just as terrified as my parents and grandparents were when the war happened then. War is never good. War is never right. And I'm so grateful to those people that are courageous enough to risk their life and often pay with their life to enable us to have a reasonable amount of freedom. Now, that said, freedom is not absolute. You should think more about what freedom really means. Do you know what freedom means? Let's just talk about freedom when it comes to health and wellness. I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a political person at all. I have my own opinions, yes, I do, but I keep them mostly to myself. As humans, we are uniquely able to think, and we often think that our thoughts are free, right? We are by law, we are free to think what we want, but really, are we? Do we have freedom of thought? We think we do, but really, we are limiting ourselves. You may remember your parents telling you when you expressed a thought or feeling or what you were thinking, don't say that. That's bad. That's hysteric. And we internalize it as children, and later we say it to ourselves. And we don't even want to go there. It scares us. This is limiting our thoughts, our options, our potential. We can learn to deal with it in a better, more healthier way because truly it's our choice what we do with it. Now, there's another freedom that I know a few things about, freedom of choice. In any situation, we have a freedom of choice. I personally witnessed Viktor E. Frankl, who survived the Holocaust under Hitler. He was a Jew. I heard him speak. He was liberated by the Allied forces that we are now remembering, the people that died for his freedom. He was grateful for his life, and he used it to create a method to help people give meaning, logotherapy. He was an amazing human being. He died in the 80s. And he wrote books like Man's Search for Meaning. I recommend for anybody to read it. It's amazing. That is how a choice to stay alive, to do what is necessary to survive under horrible conditions, and choose the thoughts, choose to be focused on a better future. He let that mindset steer his decisions in the concentration camps. He survived, and he helped many, many people have a better life because of it. And he only survived because there were people like the heroes that we are celebrating today, the Allied forces, that were brave enough to go in and fight the people that were still submitting to Hitler. Now, then we have what's called free speech. We think we have free speech, do we? Think about that. What is free of speech? We may need to limit free speech to a certain extent. I limit my speech. I won't I at least try not to say things when somebody listens that will hurt that person. I want to help people. I honestly want. So I limit my freedom of speech to not say things that I know would be hurtful to others. So theoretically, I can say what I want. In practice, I don't. And I have a nice example for that. So imagine you're in front of a police station, and let's say you say something like, let me get an example. Let me find that. What could you say? You could say, I am robbing the bank. You say that to a policeman in front of the bank, you're very likely to be arrested and questioned at least, if not put in jail for a while. If you say the same thing to your husband while you're watching TV in the living room, he likely will look at you, chuckle, and say, really? You're kidding, right? So, free speech is very different. What we choose to express in speech should be different on the situation and appropriate. And we learn that in culture during upbringing. There's a nice acronym, and I posted this week. The letters think before you speak. And the T stands for true, is what you want to say true. If it's not true, don't spread lies. Keep it to yourself. Is it helpful? If it's not helpful in any way, maybe you shouldn't say it. Is it inspiring or important? That's the I. If not, maybe it's better not said. Is it necessary in the situation you're in? If not, sometimes silence is better. And lastly, the K. Is it kind? So many of us choose to say things, or blabber them out, I should say, that are very unkind and not necessary, not inspiring, not helpful, and even often we know they're not true. So I want to encourage you today to think deeply about this. What does freedom mean to you? Where are you limited in your freedoms by external powers? We all are. If I'm driving, I'm limited by the laws of the road, and it makes total sense. With my consent, by the way, I can choose, I still have freedom of choice, I can choose to break the rules and drive without a license, speed, or whatever, but there's consequences, right? I get a ticket, I go to jail, I have an accident. It's all not pleasant. So it's my choice what I do. But my freedom is limited that way, and it makes sense. But there's also internal limited. Ask yourself, where do internal limits hinder you? And what limits would you want to choose for yourself? And what limits do you expect from others that they put on their speech, on their thoughts, on their actions? And are your expectations to others reasonable? It's hard sometimes, looking back in history from what my parents and grandparents, who were, by the way, Caucasian, so the good Germans under Hitler, they felt free, as did most Germans. And if you happened to be a Jew or a gypsy or disagree with the German government of the time, you went to jail. You went to the concentration camps. And what a irony that the entrance of the concentration labor camps was decorated with Arbeit macht frei, labor frees you. Isn't that sarcastic? It's terrible. How must those poor people have felt when they were dragged under those signs into it? And my parents told me they couldn't understand why suddenly there was war in Europe and the devastation that followed. Now, my parents were kids. I don't blame them at all. I don't judge them. My grandparents were adults. Did they see it coming? No, they didn't. So how can we avoid it in the future? Similar things. Is it even possible to avoid similar events in the future? How can we overlook when other people's freedom is severely threatened or limited? How can we see it? How can we intervene? Can we? Most Germans, like my own grandparents, watched Jews being forcefully deported. They didn't take action. They didn't join the opposition. They didn't think things through. They believed the official government narrative of the time. They are just being relocated for their own safety. They felt afraid. So today, my wish for Remembrance Day is we take a bit of the courage that those veterans showed, that fought and died for our country's freedom, and to not stop there, to apply it to our everyday lives. It's hard to recognize when freedom is slowly eroded. Governments all over the world throughout history have always been great at inventing more or less true reasons why these restrictions or limitations were necessary. In my opinion, the only solution for a better future is to start thinking for ourselves and not outsource it to anyone else, not to our doctors, not to the government, and certainly not to the media. Never before in history has it been so easy to spread information of any kind, to distribute messages, and to influence people. And never before has this been abused by powerful forces that have access to such large amounts of money to potentiate the distribution. This can be used for the good of all or for the detriment of humanity. If in North America we want to stay among the freest nations in this world, we need to teach our young people to think. We need to encourage them to think for themselves, see options, see possibilities, to stay open for positive change, to teach them how to weigh different options and place more emphasis on teaching our young people a system of values and morals that will empower them to use their superpowers for the good of themselves, those they love, and hopefully also of the world at large. I'm not the one to decide that. Maybe one of your children, your grandkids, one of the children that you educate, teach, and love will be the one to decide our future. So today at Remembrance Day, think about how you want to be remembered by those who have contact with you today. Do you want to be remembered as a loving, caring person that tried to do the best for yourself, those you love, and mankind? Or as a ruthless, angry, cranky person only concerned about their own power? It's your choice.